Hello everyone! In this video we're going to be talking about using techniques involving watercolor with colored pencil over the top. We're going to start by looking at one of my paintings that I've done. You can see I started with a base of watercolor and then added colored pencils over the top to create textures and give it some more detail. As you look, there's highlights created in the mountains, and then as we get into the sand, there's a lot more shadows and sort of textural qualities created with the colored pencil. So to start with what we're doing today, I'm just going to quick sketch out a pair of eyes and just make sure that I'm drawing lightly with my pencil, since I'll be covering everything up with colored pencil and watercolor. So I'm just going to divide it in half. So on the right side, I'm going to use objective color, which would be like color that's realistic. So I'm just going to lightly put in some washes of skin tones. And then on the left side, I'm going to use subjective color, which is kind of crazy abstract color. And then I'm going to put colored pencil over the top to define the features. So I kind of have to work both sides back and forth in order to, utilize my time wisely. Otherwise, I'd be spending half my time just waiting for paint to dry. I'm just kind of splattering some color in here just to make it a little more exciting, give some movement to everything. And then I use a paper towel to kind of blot out some of the highlighted areas. When I head back to the right side, I'm going to start adding in a few more layers of watercolor to start building up values with my watercolor. So when you work with colored pencil and watercolor together, you can be as detailed or as loose as you want, depending on what sort of style you want to go for. So the more detailed you are with your watercolors, the less work you have to do with your colored pencils. Whereas if we're talking about something like on the left side where it's just kind of a wash of color, then you're going to have to spend a little bit more time on the colored pencil end, because you'll have to build up those details to fill it in. So I'm going to add, probably some middle values at the most with the watercolors, and I'll get the darks with the colored pencils. So you can see it's starting to become a little more realistic as I'm building up those colors and values. Now, once I have all of the details in place that I want with my colored pencil, whenever I feel like it's a good time to stop, I'm going to wait for it to dry completely, obviously. Time has elapsed here. And then go in with my colored pencils. And just like I mentioned in my colored pencil tutorial, where I'm also drawing an eye, maybe you've realized that I kind of like drawing eyes, it's really important to notice that our skin tones have way more than just peaches and browns and yellows in them. There's lots of other colors going on. So you'll see that I'm using lots of blues and violets to kind of give the depth to the skin. Obviously, of course, I'm going to use some of my own skin tone colors. Here I have kind of like a deep terracotta sort of orange that I'm going to start defining things with. But the key thing when working with colored pencils that I've found works for me is to slowly build up values. So you don't want to like jump in with black right away, because that can get kind of overwhelming. I feel like it's better to start with kind of middle values and just slowly build up as you go along, and then start to add in the darks to make those pops of color and value. So I'm just building up the skin tone with yellows, blues, pinks, oranges. And I'm actually doing this pretty loosely. So I'm even leaving some of my marks as just hatching lines to kind of add a little bit more texture with my watercolor. If I wanted to, I could blend them together more. I guess it's really up to your own taste. So some people like a lot more smooth blending. Others may prefer a more stylistic approach where you're showing the marks that you're making. I'm kind of in the middle. I like both, so I guess it just depends on the mood I'm in the day. So as I'm going along, I'm actually starting to get darker and darker values. So I'm choosing darker colored pencils as I'm going along to start building up those values as we go in. You can see I leave just some of those loose marks at the bottom just for a little bit of style. And now I'm going in with like a dark sepia brown, and I prefer using dark browns over black most of the time because I feel like it's a more natural color. However, I'm not going to say never use black because I do use black. I just prefer to get my values with other colors, especially like combinations of that sepia brown mixed with a dark blue, like an ultramarine or a Prussian blue. I feel like those give near blacks that are a lot more interesting to look at. And then I'm just going to hop in and add some of the finer details like the eyelashes and some of the more of the smaller marks in the eye. Now, when we begin on the left side with the wash of color, we need to spend quite a bit more time building up layers of color to create the skin tone, because obviously we have to cover up a lot of those darker values that we've created with the wash. Obviously, depending on what you're doing, you may want to leave areas of that wash open and showing to create a little more stylistic approach. However, in this case, I'm going to create a realistic interpretation of the same eye over the top of this wash. So I'm spending quite a bit of time layering and layering these colored pencils to create a pretty solid base of color. The only thing that I find problematic with this is that if you put too many layers of colored pencil, and it gets pretty thick, you tend to get a bit of a wax buildup with it, and then there's really like a point where you can't add any more colored pencil to it. And in instances such as that, if you spray it with some spray fixative or workable fixative, that will sometimes help create a little bit of a tooth, so something for your colored pencil to stick to again, so it's not slippery like the wax. So that's sometimes a good option for you if you feel like you can't add more. So you can see in this case, I'm starting with the lighter colors and I'm slowly building in darker values. Whereas on the other side, I kind of went with mid-range values and then slowly went darker. But in this case, we need to have those light values pop out. So I'm even bringing out the white here and using that as a tool to blend with and also to lighten. Once I have that sort of base area of color in place, then I can start coming in with middle range and darker value colored pencils to start bringing out details. What's cool about this technique is you can stop at any point, so it could be like your image is appearing out of the wash of watercolor, like it's almost, or like it's fading into it. Or you could have it so that it's really just popping out at you. So it's all kind of a matter of how detailed you want to go with your colored pencils. So now I'm coming in with more of those mid-range values to create some more depth in the skin tone. And I'm trying to kind of mimic the same marks that I made on the right side, just leaving some of those hatch marks visible. And then I'm going to hop back in with those dark values to add my final details to the piece. And then lastly, just a little pop of black to really make things stand out. So this is what you get when you combine watercolor with colored pencil over the top of it. Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out my other tutorials on drawing and painting.